we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. The topic for today's webinar is Energize Your Impact, How Funders and Donors Can Support Equitable Solar Power. This webinar is being presented by the Clean Energy States Alliance, also known as CESA. I am Samantha Donalds. I'm the Communications Manager here at CESA, and I'm going to kick things off before I pass it over to our panelists. And first, I'd like to go over some very quick webinar logistics. All of our attendees are in listen-only mode. You can call in via telephone or use your computer mic and speakers to join the audio portion of the webinar, which you probably already have going if you can hear me now. If you'd like to minimize your webinar console, you can click on the orange arrow that you see circled here. If you'd like to view the presentation's full screen, you can also click on that orange arrow to expand that webinar control panel. One thing you might like to do with your webinar control panel is to submit your questions and your comments. We'll be saving about 15 minutes at the end of the webinar for a Q&A with the audience. We love to get to audience questions. Please type those in when you think of them, and we'll get to as many as we can. A final note, this webinar is being recorded. We will send you a copy of the webinar slides and the webinar recording probably tomorrow. And we'll also post those on our website, cesa.org/webinars. And that's a good URL to know because it is where we post all of our webinar materials, upcoming and archived. So as I mentioned before, today's webinar is being presented by the Clean Energy States Alliance, also known as CESA. CESA is a national nonprofit coalition of public agencies and organizations working together to advance clean energy. CESA works with state leaders, federal agencies, industry representatives, and other stakeholders to develop clean energy programs and inclusive renewable energy markets. CESA members, who are mostly state agencies, include many of the leading clean energy movers and shakers in the country, and you can see their logos on your screen here. Those are our members here. And so with that, I'm now going to pass it over to Greg Horner. Greg is an independent consultant working with CESA. Greg works on a wide range of environmental projects for nonprofits and foundations, and Greg will be telling us more about the Scaling Up Solar project, which is on your screen now.
Super. Thanks so much, Sam, and thanks everyone for joining us today to learn about this essential topic in the transition to the clean energy economy. It's really encouraging to see the progress that's being made in bringing solar to low and moderate income communities. And we're fortunate today to have three excellent speakers with us to share examples of their work and insights from the field and to answer your questions. Next slide, please, Sam. A few notes about today's webinar. Most solar projects in under-resourced communities can be divided into these three categories. Next slide. Today's webinar will focus on the third one, on developing solar projects in partnership with community institutions such as affordable housing, health centers, and homeless shelters. If you want to hear more about why this particular sector was chosen, you can ask Vero in the Q&A or check out this report. Next slide, please, which was recently produced by CESA, and which I encourage all of you to read. It outlines a range of innovative strategies that funders are using to support solar in LMI communities. Now, that's a term you're going to hear a bunch during the webinar, LMI. That's shorthand for low and moderate income. Next slide, please. So our speakers will each have 10 minutes to share. They could easily use much more time than that, but Kate will be first. She is the Deputy Director of the Honnold Foundation and a member of the Laguna Pueblo in New Mexico. She will talk about the importance of investing in people. Chelsea will be second. She's the Deputy Director at Native Renewables and a member of the Navajo tribe. Chelsea will walk us through a case study and some of the strategies they use at Native Renewables. And then Vero is the Program Director at the Clean Energy States Alliance. She's the author of that report I showed a minute ago, and she lives in Montpelier, Vermont. She'll give an overview of the report, some takeaways, and share some ideas for how you can take next steps. After all the speakers, we'll have time for questions, and you should feel free to put your questions into the little chat box somewhere on your screen, and we'll handle those at the end. With that, I'm very pleased to turn it over to Kate from the Honnold Foundation. Welcome, Kate.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Greg. Awesome. Well, I'm super excited to be here today. A while ago when Vero was creating the report, I spent some time speaking with her and had a great conversation. It's doing it highlighted some really amazing projects and really made the case for why we invest in community-based solar energy solutions. So as Greg mentioned, I am the Deputy Director at the Honnold Foundation. I believe that they're going to drop the link to our website in the chat here pretty shortly. One second. Is that working? Samantha, there we go.
Got it, there you go.
Cool, thank you. So just really high, I'm gonna start with a really high level overview of the Honnold Foundation, kind of who we are, what we do, all that good stuff. So Honnold Foundation, we exist to partner with marginalized communities to expand equitable access to solar energy. That looks really different depending on where we work. We work globally, primarily in the Americas and on island nations around the world. And so it can look really different depending on the geography, but our goal is always based in partnership and also focused around access to solar energy. So with that, we're really dedicated to helping communities lead the transition to renewable energy and providing resources that they need to adapt and thrive. So the goal is not for us to drive the transition, it's really to support the community needs as they lead that transition to renewable and solar energy. Is this going to work? There we go. A little bit about us. So we were founded in 2012 by Alex Honnold, who is most well known for Free Solo and other pretty wild rock climbing expeditions. So we were founded by him in 2012. And then in 2013, Alex was living in a van and his climbing career was really taking off. And he decided that it was time for him to start committing a third of his income that he was getting from climbing to different solar energy projects around the world. So that was really kind of the start of how Honnold Foundation really kicked off. And then later in 2018, we became an independent 501c3 nonprofit. And in 2020, we started a big grant making initiative, also known as our core fund, which is basically the primary grants that we give away to community organizations around the world. The first year, we didn't really know what to expect, but it really took off. We received over 800 applications and had to narrow that down to just 12 partners. So it was a process, but more than anything, it just demonstrated the need for organizations and work that the Honnold Foundation does. This past year, we kept the core fund going and we launched another round. We do it every year, and we were able to give away 24 grants to partners around the world. And we also launched a new capacity building program called the Levine Impact Lab that I'll speak to a little bit later. So as of today, we're partnering with over 60 communities around the world, and that number is only growing because that need and the gap is very much still there. So the way that we approach our work is really guided by our partners. And the goal is to not only provide funds, but also the capacity building and other support that is needed for these organizations to thrive and to really take off and make the impacts that we all know that they can make. So it's grounded in basically 3 pillars. The first is really intentional capacity building. So supporting partner needs, whether it's organizational development, leadership development, things ranging from strategic planning to budgeting, but really responding to that capacity building as a response to what partners are asking for. And we do that both on an individual level and also on a group level. The next thing that we do is we provide unrestricted funding. So the projects that we fund and the organizations that we fund generally will apply with a certain project in mind. We give them a grant for that project, but they're welcome to use those funds however is best going to serve their needs. So whether that's, you know, contributing to the solar project that they applied for, they can do that in addition to, you know, covering staff salaries or buying subscriptions that they need in order to run their communications platforms. Like we're happy to support whatever needs that organization has. And so that's a really big pillar of ours. The last one that we do a lot of and that we're really growing at is partner-led storytelling. That, of course, again, comes in a lot of different forms and really ranges from photojournals to our Instagram and social accounts to feature films. There's a feature film that will come out later this month that is super exciting, and once that comes out, we'll make sure that we share it all. But those storytelling efforts and the communication support that we provide, again, are responsive to and really guided by the needs of our partners. So with that said, when we think more closely about kind of the grant making that we provide and the wraparound capacity support that we provide, we focus on three main things. So the first thing is that communities are always the experts, and we know that the most sustainable solutions, the ones that truly are going to last, are the ones that are built for communities by those same communities. So that's part of the reason why we provide unrestricted grant making efforts. The next thing is we have this saying of once a partner, always a partner. So we consider our grantees, we consider them partners. We're in this work together. And that partnership never ends. And so even after a project is done, we'll always boost up the work of our partners. We'll feature them on platforms. They can always come back to us if they have specific needs, and we'll use our network to really try and connect them and fit the needs however whatever needs they have. The last one is we really prioritize both people and the planet. And so that's really a core view that we use and approach of our work, is that solar energy is a tool. It's not the end. Solar energy is a tool for future community development and future, you know, and really help changing the shape of communities around the world. And so we don't want solar energy to be the end. We want the things that solar energy can do, access to clean water, access to clean food, all of those things. That is the goal. A little bit about our impact thus far. So HF, we're one of the few intermediary funders focused on renewable energy. Like I said, we've had 60 plus partners around the world. One of the things that's really been really cool is we've deployed nearly 2 megawatts of community solar over the past, since 2020. And so that number and seeing that grow has been really amazing. We have 3 main programs. The first is the Core Fund, which is our grant making program. The second is the Levine Impact Lab. And I'm gonna drop I think we're gonna have the organizers drop the link in the chat here shortly. That's a one-on-one capacity building workshop. And the last is a microgrid project that we have, that it's really in a pilot phase, and we're piloting a community-owned microgrid that's one of a kind to pilot 14 small businesses in Puerto Rico. Did that go? Sorry, there's a bit of a lag here on, there we go. So to focus a little bit more on the co-development that we do, the first is the Levine Impact Lab. So that's a 3-year cohort style program, and it really provides individual and organizational leadership capacity building, and we're co-developing that along with the participants that are taking part in this cohort. And Native Renewables is actually one of those, and it has been their insight and their feedback on this program have been really great thus far. And I'm looking forward to working with them over the next couple of years, both as a grant partner and then through the Levine Impact Lab. So speaking of Native Renewables, they have been a partner of ours since 2021, when we provided support to develop 3 new solar installations on the Hopi and Navajo reservations. And then we re-upped that grant with a 2-year unrestricted grant to generally support their funds and whatever they need. And so the impact has been really broad. Native Renewables is doing really amazing work, not only doing solar installations and increasing access to energy, but also doing a lot of education and job training and really building an ecosystem, a sustainable ecosystem of renewable energy. They are also, as I mentioned, one of the cohort members in the Levine Impact Lab, and so receiving one-on-one support with through impact advising and mentorship to really nail down their goals over the next 3 years and develop a roadmap of how to get there. So it's been really cool sharing that experience with them. The other organization that I really want to highlight is Feed the Second Line. So they're an organization that we started working with to increase solar energy capacity and energy security in New Orleans. And so they work really closely with the culture bearers of Mardi Gras and just really the heart of New Orleans. And what they're doing is really cool. They're installing basically like little energy hubs and energy security hubs on restaurants around the city. And so they're doing solar plus battery storage on these restaurants. And the goal is to really create a network of microgrids, of little mini grids that will provide access to food and electricity and other safe spaces for communities in natural disaster. And they're partway there. They've done a couple installations already. This picture is from one of the restaurants that recently got a solar installation that's up and running. So it's been really neat to watch that happen. And so cool to learn more about the work that they're doing, the need that's there, and really the impact that something like a microgrid network in the city of New Orleans can have. They're also part of the Levine Impact Lab, and so it's been great to work with them along the way as they develop their plan. I know I am a little bit over time, but I don't have that much more. I'll speed through the slides because this will be recorded. So I just wanted to touch base real fast on the lessons learned and the opportunities that have really come out of the work that we're doing. I think the biggest takeaway really is that working with community partnerships and really working on community-based solar, it requires a really true and honest commitment to the partners that you're working with. And it requires you to view them as partners and really do this work together. In a lot of ways, it requires you to have more flexibility and empathy and really understand what the key components are. Communities and the needs of communities, just like because communities are made up of individuals, they change over time and timelines change and things can get difficult. Some things are delayed, some things are advanced. And so it really requires a lot of flexibility and just really constant communication. The other thing what we've really learned is for our work to be successful and for us to really accomplish our mission, it is vital that we prioritize the needs and really develop the way that we do our work based off of the needs and the voices of our partners. So really thinking about who is our driver here, and the driver really is the partners that we're working with. For us as a smaller foundation, it was really beneficial. We learned this lesson. It was really beneficial to really kind of narrow in our geographic scope. We're not a huge foundation. We're a pretty small staff. And so it's been really great to develop deeper relationships and closer expertise in smaller geographic regions. So that's been a huge learning lesson for us. And really, I think another big thing for us, I won't go through all of these, but I think another big thing for us is that in the US that we've learned is that there's a lot more need for funding in the Southeast. We work with Feed the Second Line and really thinking about who they have access to in terms of resources and additional support feels pretty limited. And so really upping support and focus in the Southeast region has really stood out as one of the big lessons and kind of areas for opportunities for a lot of other funders to get involved in this work. So I will cut it there. I know I'm a little bit over time, so sorry I wasn't able to get to all the slides, but such is life.
Hello all, hopefully you can hear me. Good afternoon, morning, wherever you are. My name is Chee. I'm Deputy Director for Native Renewables, one of the partners that Kate talked about, and I will share a little bit more about the work that we're doing as an organization, but also in partnership with Honnold Foundation. Okay, let's see if this works. Oh man, I might have double clicked. So we'll see. So a little bit of context and grounding for the work that we do with Native Renewables is we work with two tribal nations, the Navajo Diné Nation and the Hopi Nations. Here's a map to give you an idea of where it is in the context of the United States. You can see in the lower right-hand corner. And then if we blow that up, it's also in the Four Corners region. The Navajo Nation has a big land base, and then inside there's also the Hopi tribal nation. As a whole, it covers about 29,000 plus square miles, and that's about the size of West Virginia. There are about 186,000 people. Oh, there's a lot more than that there, both Navajo and Hopi that live in this land area. And then there are approximately 13,000 homes that don't have electricity. So with that, Native Renewables was founded to address that gap, that energy access gap. Additionally, we recognize that for Navajo, the per capita income is around $10,000, which is a third of the national level. So not only having energy access, but also affordable energy. Okay, so about Native Renewables, our mission is to bring Indigenous-led affordable solar power solutions and knowledge to Diné and Hopi communities. We have three pillars of work that we do. The first is off-grid install. So this is funded by partners like Honnold, where we donate an off-grid solar unit to a home that does not have electricity. And with that comes education with the customers in the home, the families, letting them know the limitations of solar, but also how the solar unit works and how they can take care of their system. Additionally, it comes with 5 years of annual maintenance. So our team would go back to the home for up to 5 years to check on the system, make sure that it's working well, and also communicating with the customers, the families, about how they can change their behavior, their energy use behavior if needed or if not. So that's our Horizon Homes program. That's the Powering Homes program. And then we have another separate program that is the Repowering Homes program, which is our triage work, our repairing work. So there are systems throughout Navajo and Hopi that have solar off-grid solar units that have been installed previous to Native Renewables. And some of them are they're not working anymore. And so our team will go out and check to see what's going on, do an assessment, and with funding, we'll repair some of those pieces and then get it back running. Combined with that is our workforce program, where and you'll see in a little bit that our installers that work with us are all from Navajo and Hopi communities that we work with. And we also we're building out our current workforce program to train additional people in this solar off-grid energy sector in hopes and encourage them to work in those areas. Our education work is very ingrained in not only the workforce aspect, but the install aspect with our customers and the families we work with, but also externally with the communities that we work with, and then opportunities like this where we talk a little bit about what is solar, how does it work, what is off-grid, and how can you get the benefits of that. Here's a photo of our team. There are 15 of us, and as I had mentioned, 8 of us live in the communities we support. We were incorporated as a 501c3 in 2020, and as a whole, we have over 55 years of combined solar experience. So a little bit more about our partnership with the Honnold Foundation. As Kate had mentioned earlier, they've helped us in 3 different ways. One of the first ones was our pilot project. So we were looking into a monthly lending program and wanted support to pilot out that project. Unfortunately, it didn't work the way that we thought, but it also gave us a really good insight into the communities that we're working with and what they really need. I had mentioned before what the per capita income was about, and the idea we had of the monthly lending program didn't really meet what was out there. So one, and I'll go into this a little bit more, of the Honnold Foundation support has been incredible because they allow us to test out theories, but also to do the work that we have been doing and to be able to increase our impact. They also helped us to power and repower 13 homes on the Navajo and Hopi reservations, and one of the homes is featured here. You can see our photo and the system that we have. And then the most recent support that we've gotten from them is the Living Impact Lab. And as Kate had mentioned before, this is more focused on capacity building within the organization, and I'll talk a little bit more about this as well. So with these 3 areas that we have gotten support from Honnold Foundation, is we were able to test out our theory in a safe environment, and even though our theory was not correct, we still were able to help families with that funding source. And Honnold was amazing in helping us think through that, and then also being able to maneuver or to pivot away from this theory. As a whole, with the 13 homes that we've been able to work with, our team has increased our team's knowledge, our effectiveness, and our efficiency to install systems. We've gotten a better understanding of the equipment that's out there in the field, but also the equipment that we install. And then it's also, I had mentioned the Living Impact Lab. So one of our vision is to work with these 13,000 homes that don't have electricity and to bridge that access gap. And 13,000 is a lot. And our work is we've been wanting to scale to installing 100 systems a year, and if at that pace, it would take us about 130 years. But there are other people who are also doing solar and electrical work on both Navajo and Hopi, and so that's I think that will happen hopefully in my lifetime. But with the Living Impact Lab, we've been given the space and encouragement to work on our dreams. So our dream is to install 100 systems in a year, and last year we were at 18. This year we're projecting to be around 40. And because of the Living Impact Lab, we are getting pushed to actually think about what that would look like, to put it out, draw it out, to plan it out, to spend some time with some key people and to put it down on paper. So we have this space to dream, which is incredible, and we haven't had that chance yet until now. And then lastly, the people that we work with, we are always working to increase their knowledge of solar and how to interact with it. So quickly, I'm getting close to my time. So case study here, we have worked with multiple different people in this particular work. We worked with a 90-year-old mother and her daughter who live off grid, and they're about 5 miles from a utility line. it took us multiple trips to install the system at their house, partially because some of the home was not wired. The soil conditions, as you can kind of see, I hope in the photo there, it's really rocky. And so it took a lot longer for our team to do the work that they needed to do. We were also installing in winter weather. This past winter was pretty intense and great for us in the Southwest, but it was also, it extended our install time. And then because they live so far off the grid, customer communications was challenging. So not everybody has access to reliable cell phone service. And additionally, if they don't have electricity to power their phones, it's kind of difficult to get a hold of them. Quick lessons learned from the work that we're doing is figuring out just different ways and creative ways to communicate with our customers, having multiple points of contact, and then doing like a daisy chain kind of situation. If we get a hold of this person, maybe they can go out and talk to the family or their family and then get back to us. Tracking weather, we're getting better at that. Having more thorough site assessments, because these homes are about, I'm going to say on a minimum, like 3 hours away driving from our home base in Flagstaff. So if we forget something, it'll take us 3 hours to go back. And that's like a 6-hour round trip. So that's something we've learned. It's always team communication, talking through contingency, like what if we don't have this, then what do we need to have in place so that we don't have to make those trips back and forth. Since we're still pretty new, we've been able to build our people and our processes. And then, like I had mentioned, like we realized that we needed the support to be able to dream and to plan out our scaling. And so last up here is my contact information. You can follow us on social media. We have a video that I believe we'll be sharing the link to in a little bit. It tells a little bit more about the work that we do and one of the families we've worked with. And then there's our website. Thank you all. Sorry for running over time.
I think we are just fine time-wise. I would not worry. Thank you very much for these presentations, Chelsea and Kate. This is really great. So real quick, my name is Vero Bourg-Meyer. I'm the project director for this scaling up solar project that the report I'm going to talk about fell under, and that Kate and Greg mentioned at the beginning of this webinar. I'm clicking on things and there you go, it works. So as Greg mentioned, the original goal of the Scaling Up Solar for Under-Resourced Communities project is really to ensure that solar technologies benefit all people regardless of income. And we had several tracks and you heard, actually, I want to clarify, you heard from Chelsea and from Kate about their experience with Honnold Foundation and Native Renewables, and the examples that were given focused on single-family homes. The reason why that was included in our report, which actually focuses on community institutions that serve LMI communities, is because of the really distinctive approach that the Honnold Foundation has taken in supporting all sorts of organization with an impact that can be seen across all types of deployment, be it on single-family homes or multifamily or else or other types. So first, I want to plug in again this report, Energize Your Impact, which I encourage you all to go and read, particularly if you're a foundation. The Honnold Foundation's approach that was highlighted today was really focused on investing in the people, and you can read more about this on their website and in the report. And before, what's not in the report, and what I think is worth spending a little bit of time on, is why focus on LMI solar to start with. Not too much time, but just as a kind of a background information. The first reason, obviously, is to mitigate climate change. But in the context of community institutions, and I want to highlight that this is the case for all organizations, right? All of the organizations that serve LMI communities all throughout the country will benefit from reducing operational costs and avoiding shutoffs, right? And that's something that solar can provide. Can also provide resilience benefits once you start adding storage to it. And you've heard some examples here that Kate gave about the benefits of storage for folks in New Orleans, for example. Obviously, we also look at developing economic and employment opportunities, and Chelsea gave really good examples about this. But it also provides pollution exposure reduction by way of lowering the number of times in a year that peaker plants will be turned on, which are extremely polluting. And you can find more information about this on our sister organization, Clean Energy Group, that's done a lot of research on this topic. And the last reason, which is not the least in my view, is that it provides consumer with choices, which is important regardless of whether you are an LMI community or not. So LMI solar is hard. There's a reason we wrote a report about it, and we've been working on it. It's hard for a whole lot of reasons. This is a long list. I'm not going to go through this list. I will, however, highlight a few of them. Upfront costs is an obvious issue, particularly when you start adding storage to it, and the lack of access to financing. And these go together when you think of the transition from fossil fuel-based economy to a clean energy economy. Financing takes on a giant proportion of the barrier, because instead of focusing on spending money for fuel as you use your infrastructure, what you need is access to capital at the beginning to purchase the infrastructure, right? So it's really completely shifting something from an operating expenditure to a capital expenditure. And that's a really big, that has really profound implications in how LMI communities are able or not able to access this kind of infrastructure, solar and solar plus storage. There's also other things like the lack of interest of marketers, right? So customers that are just not viewed as good customers, which is not necessarily the case at all, research has shown, but also capacity constraint of the customers, right? Lack of time and familiarity and lack of information. And these are all the types of barriers that are addressed by the solutions and the strategies that are highlighted in this report. So there are three major buckets for foundations to support these, to alleviate those barriers in the report. And they're not the only ones that exist. They're just the ones that we are focusing on. There are other things that foundations can do, but if you're going to pick something to do, these are a good place to start. First, reducing cost. That's a very obvious one. Talked about how upfront costs and lack of access of financing are a really big barrier. If you can reduce costs via grants, via bulk purchasing or something else, these are good things to do. Facilitating access to corporate level and project level funding to support market building, right? So in this case, what I'm talking about is addressing the quote, lack of interest of marketers. There are developers out there that are really interested in doing this work, but it's very hard for them to find capital in the usual way, right? So your big developers, they have access to capital markets. Capital markets are not interested in providing funding for small organizations that will target specifically low and moderate income community or communities of color in a specific area, right? So providing support for these organizations to grow and to be effective is absolutely a winning strategy among many others. And the third big bucket is supporting the demand side from the customer. So addressing the capacity constraint, the lack of time, the lack of information, and that can be done through a number of different tools, such as, or strategies, such as building technical assistance funds, for example, or providing other types of direct technical assistance to organizations. So the report provides 8 models, including advantages and challenges. And these are really plain vanilla, as simple as we can make it, with a pretty little drawing for every single one of them. I'm not going to go through this one, but so the 8 models are project grants, regranting, donation of solar assets, program-related investment loans, loan guarantees, equity investment, because yes, foundations can do equity investments, technical assistance funding, and operating grants and capacity building program, which is what Honnold and Native Renewables have been talking And for each one of these models, we have a case study that is associated. So we have the list here, including the Honnold Foundation, but also the Bezos Earth Fund, the Queer Earth Solar Foundation, the Kresge Foundation, and Collective Energy, and so on and so forth. So I encourage you all to read the report. I also want to point out that the way that these are organized in the report is really meant to highlight one aspect of the case study, right? So the relationship between, let's say, the Kresge Foundation and Collective Energy in this case, we focus the case study on what's called a PRI loan. In fact, in reality, the Kresge Foundation and Collective Energy have other parts of their relationship that also include other types of tools and strategies that are also described in here. But for the sake of kind of keeping things simple, we really focus each case study on one particular strategy. So I hope that's helpful for everybody to understand. So you can read more online on our website. Here's a tiny URL if you want to check it out. But before we move on to Q&As, I really want to go back to kind of two things. If there are, I think, two things for you all to remember from this presentation from Kate and Chelsea. First is the size of the need out there for all types of support for solar, right? So you heard from Kate the hundreds of applications that they've received, having to choose only 12 in their original round of funding. There is a huge need out there. You also heard from Chelsea 13,000 homes without power in that region, and I think that it's a large region, but still a fairly small amount of land for the whole country. You can kind of just imagine the size of the need that's out there. So the second thing I would like for you to remember is there is a host of strategies that are available in this report, and to cover this variety of needs, you really need to use many of these different strategies that are presented. So I urge you to jump into this and look at all of the different strategies that are available, and find the one that you're best equipped to do and just go for it, because we all need you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vero and Kate and Chelsea. Super interesting. I know you could have all spent way more time talking about your work. Luckily, we have a little more time and we have some great questions. So let's dive right into those. First off, just wanted to get Vero quick an answer on why is there no dedicated track for multifamily housing? That's commonly thought of as a place to work on LMI solar.
So actually, multifamily housing is part of community institutions. So multifamily housing, particularly in the US, is generally owned by either public organizations, right? Or they are owned by nonprofits that have some covenants with the government to receive some support. And they are absolutely part of community institutions. So community institutions, again, could be multifamily affordable housing, could be your homeless shelters, could be your health centers, your senior care facilities, and so on and so forth. It's really broad. It's really defined as any institution that provides a service to a community scale people. if that's understandable, yeah.
Yes, thank you. Another quick one for Kate in particular was a question about, is Honnold Foundation a nonprofit? And also just wanted to throw in there, my own note is that how often are you partnering with other foundations and donors as a grant recipient?
Yep, so Honnold Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit. We also don't have an endowment. So all of the funds that we're giving out, we're raising on the side. And so it's really, we bring money in, we give it out as fast as we can. It's really kind of how we operate. And we have in the past worked with other small family foundations and big donors to basically help us raise funds to give out to those smaller organizations. We we have a couple organizations that a couple partners, like grant partners that we've worked with that have been like a referral of other organizations, other kind of allied foundations. But we don't currently have any co-funding opportunities. Although, I mean, co-funding is definitely something that we're super excited about and really interested in. And so if people are really interested in that, like, please reach out. I think, you know, our main goal is to get as many resources out the door as possible, and really to the hands of the grassroots organizations we work with.
Great. Nell, a little more of a technical question. This question started with a praise saying, incredible work, exclamation mark. How has the IRA bill changed your approach, in particular direct pay and ITC bonus adders? Any of you want to chime in on that? Chelsea, do you want to start?
Yes, I can attempt to answer this question. So the IRA for us has been kind of a whirlwind. There's a lot happening, and it's slightly, we're very excited but also slightly anxious, because part of the work that we do is to try to figure out, like, where do we fit in, right, as a nonprofit, because some of the opportunities that are available are only for X, Y, and Z, and there are ones available for nonprofits. The other part is because we work with 2 different tribal nations, that they are also eligible for some of the IRA opportunities, and how do we approach them as partners, but also let them know, like, here's how we differ than some of the other entities that you could work with. It's overwhelming, and sometimes it's very challenging for us, because we don't have the background of the federal government applications, applying for them, but also all the requirements that are needed to stay on top of, and then the reporting pieces too. So that's going to be a whole nother challenge that we'll have to figure out when it comes, and I'm sure we'll get the assistance because we do have great partners, like I had mentioned earlier. The other pieces, most of the people that we have on our team are very technical in nature, and like, we have the scientific and the technical backgrounds, but understanding, like, the federal application is tough, but also all the opportunities that we could take advantage of. For example, like the direct pay piece. I have a little task that I need to check into that. Like, what exactly is that? The other is, like, what is the ITC bonus? So there's still things that we're learning about, and I feel like we're still, like, we know a little bit, but there's a lot more that we need to understand. Another piece, just really quick, and I can turn it over to Kate, that's a little different with some of these opportunities, is that we work with tribal nations, and there's a tax difference. There's, like, different tax policies that are in place. Also, we don't have a metering policy on Navajo, and I'm not too sure about Hopi. So having, additional opportunities to install homes that are already connected to the grid, that doesn't really exist right now.
If I may add on to Chelsea's perspective, which is really interesting, we're hearing, so at CISA, the Clean Energy States Alliance, we've been doing a lot of work supporting states that are applying to the Solar for All competition, which is a $7 billion opportunity that's open to states and to tribes and to other eligible applicants to develop solar and solar plus storage across the country, specifically in disadvantaged communities. And we have produced a series of resources that are available on our website, and we can share them possibly after in the follow-up email to this webinar. 3 sets of resources, really, one focused on single family homes, one focused on community solar, and one focused on multifamily affordable housing, solar plus storage. And in those documents, we have layered a ton of information about all the tax credits possible and imaginable, including things related to direct pay and things related, compliance, things related to the way that the low income ITC adder will be administered. And that's been moving really quickly through the summer, so we've updated those documents as we could. but there's lots of information in there, and information that will be relevant to tribes as well as states, and as well as nonprofits that want to utilize this avenue to have access to funding that was previously reserved for organizations with a tax basis. So that's exciting.
Kate, anything to add, or we covered it?
Yeah, I mean, I think just from the Honnold Foundation side, of course, like we're really excited about the IRA, and it's amazing. It's like a really cool piece of legislation. And also, as Chelsea just explained, there's so many organizations, especially the ones that we work with, where the difficulty in kind of like understanding what the IRA is as it changes really quickly, who's eligible for what, how you gain those things can be really challenging. And so I think for us, really, it just kind of demonstrated the need for additional support, like the support that we offer, and the additional need for like capacity building resources and connecting networks for people that, you know, are filling out grant applications for federal grants, because it's a huge process to do, and it pays off, but it's not an easy thing to start if you don't have the background and expertise in it.
Great, thank you. Chelsea.
Yeah, one more thing that we also have been having a conversation around is what's going to happen after the IRA funding has been spent out, right? Like now we have all this equipment and infrastructure in these communities. And so what about the maintenance? What about the operations? How do we ensure that these systems are going to continue? And in the IRA, from what we've gathered so far, that really hasn't been addressed. So foundations and additional funding are other ways for us as like a nonprofit, and I'm assuming like other organizations, for us to continue the work and to ensure that this equipment, this investment actually has the longevity and works for our communities is key.
Great. A little more of another technical question to move on from there. Where do you all see value in de-risking LMI projects through electric co-op balance sheets? Hopefully one of you knows what that means.
De-risking what? Sorry, I missed the middle part.
De-risking LMI projects through electric co-op balance
projects.
sheets.
Well, I mean, there's so co-ops are one of those funky organizations that up to now did not have access to tax credits. So it's not really answering the question in the sense that it's not about de-risking, but it is certainly lowering the cost overall, right? So we are working, for example, with this organization in Colorado, this co-op in Colorado, working on the pilot specifically for manufactured homes. And when we started the pilot project work, they were like, "Oh, this is the size that we want to go." And then the IRA passed, and all of a sudden they were like, "Oh, wait a second, we can double the size of what we wanted to do," which is super exciting, right? So all of a sudden, it's not so much de-risking as it is this like influx of cash that is possible if you figure out how to structure your project right. And that means understanding direct pay, understanding all of the ins and outs of tax credit, which goes back to what Chelsea was saying. You need to have the people in place that have that knowledge, which is why you need the Chelseas and the Kates of the world to really bring this all together, right? But in terms of de-risking in and of itself, one tool that will be necessary for folks to access that no matter what will be some sort of bridge financing option, because you will have to wait until you receive that refund, in a sense, from the federal government, and that will happen after the project is put in service. So how you get that over the initial hump of the initial financing is the question. I think the state certainly has a place to a space and a role to play in this whole thing. But I think foundations certainly also have a space, a role to play in this space, in the sense that they could offer guarantees, they could offer some sort of interest rate buy downs to maybe make the cost of accessing those bridge financing products a little cheaper. So there is definitely a space for foundations and the states to play in there to support LMI projects that are focused on LMI communities within co-ops, but also within all types of nonprofits, right? So it's all tax-exempt entities are entitled to this tool, right? To use this tool. So lots more to say, but I won't bore you more than I already have.
Anyone else want to chime in on that? Electric co-ops? Otherwise, nope. Well, let's try to squeeze in one more quick question before I turn it over to Sam to wrap things up. There are a lot of questions, so I'm sorry we're not going to get to them all. Here's a more general one. Do you see the social impacts outweighing the risks often associated with capital access in LMI communities during this energy transition?
I mean, for us, that's an easy answer. Yes, absolutely. I think when we think about solar, again, we think about, it's not about the solar energy itself. It's not about the solar panel. It's about what that access to energy can do for the place that's receiving it and the place that it's being built. And that really ranges. And around the world, with our projects, we've seen huge impacts, not only reduction in greenhouse gases, but access to education and healthcare and clean food and water. And so for us, 110%, the social impacts and the benefits always outweigh the risks. And honestly, while there is definitely some risk in community-based solar investment, it's not that much. It's really not that scary. And what it takes is just a relationship and spending the time to get to know who you're working with. That's really what it's about. So you can have that clear communication, and that helps reduce the risk an enormous amount.
I'd like to add a couple things too. Additionally to what Kate said, yes, is there's also access to health, like a better well-being. So now the families that I had just talked about, the 90-year-old mother who never imagined that she'd have electricity now has it with her daughter, and now they can have fresher foods. Their health and well-being has increased. They also have access to critical communication devices. So if something happens, they can call out. Their phones are going to be charged. And the other families that we worked with, they also have access to not only education, so like virtual education, but they can work from home now. So the economy on Navajo and Hopi there's not as many jobs available as the rest of the United States. But now with having electricity, they can get internet, and they can power their computers, and people like me can work from home.
Thank you so much. It's such a nice way to segue to our closing notes. Wanted to give a big shout out, thank you to Chelsea and Kate and to Vero for your time today and over the last few weeks preparing for this. And with that, I'll hand it to Sam for the closing notes. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks, Greg. Thank you, Vero, Chelsea, and Kate. That was really excellent. What a great conversation. Thank you to everyone who attended and submitted your questions. If you have more questions or you want to get in touch and talk about any of this, I know Vero would love to speak with you. You can email her, vero@cleanegroup.org. That's the email address on your screen. She can also pass any questions or queries over to our other panelists. A couple of upcoming webinars listed on your screen here. Since you stuck around for the end of this webinar, I think perhaps you might be interested in our September 19th webinar, Pre-Development Funding for Low and Moderate Income LMI Solar and Storage Projects, a case study from New York, a couple others later in the month, and more to come. So thank you all so much. This was excellent. We'll have the recording out to you soon. We'll see you at the next one. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Bye.